There's a place He comes to me. Though I'm blind, He helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see Him face to face.
This is Kurt Kaikkonen, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, at your neighborhood church. Today on Face to Face, we'll be in the book of Joshua. So grab your Bibles and let's get started. If you want to hear this complete message in its entirety, go to yourneighborhoodchurch.com, where you can download Your Neighborhood Church app at the App Store. And now Joshua and Israel, they're back again. They're fully committed to God again. But meanwhile, somewhere in Canaan, there's something evil happening, and there's this meeting going on. And it's all these evil kings that are located on the west side of the Jordan River. And so this kind of reminds me of like the show Batman, where you have all these evil villains and they're meeting and they're going to be making these plans against Batman. So it's like you got the Hivites, you got the Amorites, you got the Canaanites, you got the Pezerites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And so it's all of them from the hills and all of them from the coast, all the way up to the northern border at Lebanon. And they've been hearing all this news, and they know what's happened to Jericho and to Ai, and they've decided not to wait around until Joshua comes to their town, because now it's not time to be defensive anymore. It's time to be offensive. And so it's time for them now to make alliances. So this is now like that TV show Survivor. And so all these rival kings from all these rival nations who have never gotten along with each other, who have constantly been at war with each other, are now making alliances with each other because now they have a common enemy to unite them, because they realize that they can't defeat Batman on their own or Israel. And instead of Israel having to go to each city to fight, they're going to bring the fight to Israel. So they're planning a frontal attack. They're planning a head-on-head battle. And so now these battles are going to be fought in the open fields of battle instead of these individual cities. But not everybody thought this way in Gotham or Canaan, because there is this group of Hivites called Gibeonites. And that's because they were Hivites from the city of Gibeon. In fact, they were made up of 4 small cities. And these people, they see no hope in joining the alliance. They don't think that's their best chance in joining this confederation of evil forces against Israel. And to them, that still sounds like a losing proposition. And they've also heard about this defeat of Jericho and Ai. And those cities, they're not very far from them. And Gibeon is probably the next city on the list, because Israel's getting very close to their territory, because they're only located about 25 miles away. But Israel doesn't know who they are yet. And so they're going to have to do something quick, and time's not on their side. And you kind of wonder here if maybe they've been spying on Israel, that maybe they had somebody listening when Joshua was reading the law out loud at Ebal, because they know that Israel has been commanded to destroy all the inhabitants of Canaan, just like it says in Deuteronomy chapter 7 that Joshua had just read there. And they would also have known from Deuteronomy that they were allowed to make alliances and treaties with the people who dwelt outside of the land of Canaan. So maybe there was somebody from Gibeon listening when Joshua read chapter 20, where in verse 10 it says, "When you go near a city to fight against it, then proclaim an offer of peace to it. And it shall be that if they accept your offer of peace and open up to you, then all the people who are found in it shall be placed under tribute to you and serve you." And by the Gibeonites already knowing that Israel was not willing to make a treaty or to coexist because of where they lived, they didn't even try to be honest with Joshua because they didn't believe that would work. So they felt that they had the need to deceive Joshua. And maybe somehow they could be left to be allowed to live, because they know if they offered an honest treaty, it would be rejected outright. And so here you could think that Israel's greatest enemy isn't really this confederation of kings who are going to come to attack them head on, but it could be this nation who's going to try to deceive them by trickery. And it says that the Gibeonites were crafty. And that doesn't mean that they were building little bird houses or scrapbooking. What it means is that they were creating this great deception. They were going to put on this great play for Israel. And so they were going to have to get all their costumes just right, and to get all their actors all dressed up as ambassadors, and that they're coming away from this far away country, from a place that you never heard of before, because this is a land far, far away. And so this is almost like a fairy tale, because this is a fairy tale, because this is all make-believe. And then they dug through their garbage and they took the old bread that they were probably going to feed to their pigs. And then they put it in their old sacks and they put their wine into their old, most torn and mended wineskins. And then they wear all their old patched up garments and their worn out sandals. And then they loaded up their donkeys. And then they drove them over there and they started looking like the Beverly Hillbillies coming down through the hills of Gilgal. Now, this is a different Gilgal than the Gilgal that they stayed at when they first crossed the Jordan. And the very first thing that we hear out of the Gibeonites' mouths from our reading is where they just come out and they say, make a covenant with us. And they tell Joshua their lie, because we're from a very, very far away place. And Israel here, they knew that they were Hivites. And it may be because the language that they spoke, or maybe it was because of their accent. But they did have some discernment here, because this didn't sit right with them. And so they call it out right away. And it almost came out as if they were accusing them of lying. And they say, how do we know you don't live among us? How can we make a covenant with you? And so they ask all the right questions. And they never thought to pray about it. And we're told in verse 15 that they never did ask counsel of the Lord, because I believe if they would have asked him, he would have given it. And the Gibeonites here, they didn't address any of the questions that Israel asked them when they asked about where they're from. They just said, we're your servants, which is very humble. And Israel, they're not used to people treating them like this, because so far, every foreign people that have come across Israel, they've cursed them and they've been hostile to them and they've tried to fight them. So this is very different. This is different because these people seem to like them, but it still doesn't sit right with Joshua, because he asks them straight up. He says, who are you? Where do you come from? So now this is twice now, because there is this sense that the Lord gives to his people. He gives them this discernment about when they're being lied to. And this discernment, I believe, God gives to all of us, and it comes from God when somebody's trying to con you. But you can override this discernment, and you can ignore it. And these people are good liars. And these people, they wrote a really good play and they put it on. They could have all won Academy Awards. And then what they do to convince them is they use a little God talk, some religious words as if they're God seekers, that we came from a far country because we heard of your God's fame and we came to worship him. And now they're confessing this belief in their God. In all good cons, they usually have a God bless you with it, a little God talk. You almost see it written on every cardboard sign ever held by any street beggar, because it's a quick way to throw off real believers, because we want to fall for it every time. And they're so clever here, because what they tell of what they've heard about their God, that how they have heard about their deliverance from Egypt which was 40 years ago. And then they're very quick to mention these two victories over the two kings of the Amorites from the other side of the Jordan River, with King Og and King Sihon from Bashan and Heshbon. And these are the same exact battles that Rahab knew about. So all they were telling them was old news. They're not going to say a word about Jericho or Ai because that's too new, because those had just happened in the last couple of weeks. And that would undo their deception, because if they had come away from a faraway land like they were claiming, they couldn't have heard of those battles yet. And so they keep talking about how great their God is and how their people had sent them away to become their servants because of the fame of their God. And then the Gibeonites, they just bring them back to look at their stuff. We're from so far away that all this stuff was new when we left. And now all our water bottles leak and our clothes are worn and torn and our bread is garbage. And it was hot when we left. But they just left yesterday. But your God was so important to us that we had to come make peace with you. We had to have a treaty. So they were so humble and so kind. And they called themselves our servants. So what's not to like about these people? These people think we're great. Finally, somebody got it right. Somebody finally recognizes how great we are. And so all the leaders, they went back and they looked at their stuff, and seeing all the evidence, it supported everything that they said. And then Israel leaders, they wanted to believe this, because if they were their servants and they were a foreign people from far away, they would be paying them tribute, which is money. They would be giving them taxes. In Israel here, they're only looking at the evidence. They're only looking at the science. And they didn't seek God in any way to see if they were to make this treaty. And they gave no time to ask God about what he thought. So they're all walking by sight. They're not walking by faith. And this is the second time since they crossed the Jordan that they made this same exact mistake. They do things and they're doing them without praying, because this is the same mistake Joshua made about not seeking God, like the first time when Israel went up against Ai. And so this prayerless life is starting to become a problem for Israel, not seeking God's will about anything in prayer. And so what they do is they actually violate God's law, and they make a covenant that they should have never made. And all of these leaders, they swore to the Gibeonites in the name of Yahweh. And then it was only 3 days later that they find out, because it's almost like Israel, they just start walking through their neighborhoods because it's only 25 miles away. And it's kind of like, hey, what are you doing here, Joe? We thought you lived far away.
You've been listening to Face to Face. Face to Face on this radio station has been provided by Your Neighborhood Church. If you want to help support Face to Face and put this program on other stations just like yours, you can contact us at yourneighborhoodchurch.com or write Your Neighborhood Church, P.O. Box 500, Romeo, Michigan 48065.
There's a place he comes to me. Though I'm blind, he helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see him face to face.
Tune in again tomorrow at this same time as we continue to go through the Bible.